It was late one evening when a weary Henry backed into the sheds. It had been another in a long string of busy days. 2 months ago, the fat, small and thin controllers had initiated a tourism campaign. It had been quite successful. Tourists had flocked to the island of Sodor, and although extra trains had been put on everywhere, it was the mainline engines who were the busiest. Henry sighed. I knew these tourists are good for the railway, but they're making us too busy, James finished. Donald looked over, slightly puzzled. I thought you had Patrick taken some trains to the other railway, he asked, thinking of the other railway diesel who helped them from time to time. Yes, but that's not enough. What we really need is another engine. I'm afraid you won't have much luck finding another steam engine. The other railway is all diesels, Diesel pointed out. Well, there's no need for you to sound so pleased about it. I was simply stating a fact. Well, you can keep your facts to yourself. Aye, Douglas agreed. Some have escaped like wee Oliver. We'll find one. But as much as the steam engines didn't want to admit it, Diesel was right. A steam engine was exactly what the North West Railway needed. After all, seeing real steam engines running properly was one of the main attractions for tourists. They just needed to know where to find one. I wish you luck. Before the argument could go any further, Gordon backed down into the shed. He had just returned from Barrow-in-Furness, the station where the North West Railway interchanged trains with the other railway. You're back late, Donald observed. Yes, the express was delayed on the other railway, coming down from London. Now, what's all this fuss? We're trying to find another steam engine for the main line. Aye, Donald agreed. You three on the main line really need some help. You can say that again. Suddenly, to the surprise of the other engines, Gordon grinned. Do you remember when I went foreign a few months ago? Yes, it was during that nasty storm, wasn't it? That's right. Patrick had burnt out one of his traction motors and couldn't take the Limited up to London. Didn't you tell me you saw another steam engine up there? Yes, an old friend, Gordon added, thinking back to that day a few months ago. He had just backed down onto the express for the return journey to Knapford when the whistle of another steam engine sounded out. That can't be, Gordon exclaimed, astounded. Even as he spoke, Gordon caught sight of a light green steam engine backing down onto the train next to him. He immediately recognized her black and white striped livery. Indeed, it was one he had once worn himself. As she drew closer, he could make out the number on her cab side. It seemed familiar, and memories from 60 years ago stirred in Gordon's mind. Would your name be Alice by any chance? The other engine looked over curiously.
You look like an A1, but not quite. Have we met?
Yes. After I was built in 1920, we were stabled at Doncaster together until I went to the North West Railway in 1923, just after the grouping.
That sounds familiar.
Alice thought back 60 years, recalling old memories. I had only just been painted in the LNER green, Gordon continued. I wasn't really given a class, but I suppose you could say it would have been A0.
Something stirred in Alice's memory.
Are you Gordon?
That's right. I must say I'm surprised to see you. How did you end up here?
I was bought by the Great Northern Railway Preservation Society a few decades ago when diesels were coming in. Now I take tourists who want to ride behind a steam engine. It's not too bad, but I'm not allowed to go too far. It would be nice to stretch my wheels again.
I'll talk to our controller. Maybe you can come and visit our railway sometime.
I hope so. I've heard a lot about it from Patrick.
The engine's conversation was interrupted as the guard's whistle sounded out.
I'm afraid I'll have to get going.
Goodbye, Gordon. It was good to see you again.
It was good to see you too, Alice. And that's when I left with the express, Gordon finished.
The Great Northern Railway?
It was one of the railways which was grouped into the LNER in 1923.
Did you end up talking to the Fat Controller about her? Asked Henry.
I'm afraid I forgot to mention it.
The lassie's probably been wondering if something's happened to you.
Well, I've been busy. We all have. I'll make sure to mention it to the Fat Controller tomorrow.
It was raining lightly the next morning when Gordon belatedly kept his promise to Alice.
And she's owned by the Great Northern Railway Preservation Society,
Gordon was saying. The Fat Controller nodded thoughtfully.
Yes, Alice sounds like just who we need. I'll get in contact with the president of the Great Northern Railway Preservation Society.
The guard's whistle sounded out, and Gordon pulled out with the express. The Fat Controller watched thoughtfully as Gordon shuffled away. Although having Alice visit would alleviate some of the workload, it would still only be a temporary solution. Meanwhile, in London, Gordon was the last thing on Alice's mind. She hadn't taken any trains in the last month or so, and her tender had remained empty since her last run. She had a nasty feeling she knew why. Her trains had been getting lighter over the last 6 months or so, as less people came to ride an outdated steam engine amongst all the modern diesels. A car pulled up outside the shed, and Alice looked over curiously. A few moments later, a man stepped around in front of the shed. Alice recognised him instantly. Dave Matthews, the president of the GNR Preservation Society.
Hello, Dave.
Hello, Alice. Alice's face fell. It didn't sound good. As you know, things haven't been too good lately. The other volunteers and I have tried to find additional funds and sponsors to keep your trains running. Dave glanced away for a moment. I'm afraid we haven't been successful.
I understand.
Dave cleared his throat, and for a moment Alice thought she saw a tear in his eye. There's a borough council in East Anglia who are doing up one of their parks. They may be interested in making you the central attraction there, for children to play on.
What if they don't want me?
Then we've got no choice. I'm sorry, Alice.
It's alright, Dave. I know you've done all you can. If it hadn't been for all you volunteers, I would have been scrapped long ago. Please, let the others know how grateful I am.
I will. With that, Dave returned to his car and drove away. Alice watched him go. She had meant what she had said about being grateful, and although it wasn't the busiest time of her life, she had enjoyed working with the volunteers who had become her friends. But now it seemed that her time may be at an end.
If they couldn't find a new home for her before the lease on the shed expired in 2 days, then she would have to be scrapped.